First, I think it's important to separate, the use of blockchain in an enterprise space from cryptocurrencies, right? So when we're talking about blockchain, we're looking about distributed data. And distributed data is important because sometimes if there's a single source of reference, it's easy to corrupt the data, easy to change the data. So if we're trying to create trusted data, you want multiple approvals that that data element is correct. And that's the whole idea of distributing data across nodes or platforms. So that's in the essence what a blockchain is. It's really distributed, trusted data. Why is that important? Well, it's probably not very important if you're going to get some money out of your ATM, right? You go in, get some cash out. You just need a single source of truth, which is your bank. It's not going to be any use when you're buying something in the supermarket. You're running it through a barcode. You just need a single source of truth. But if you're in the supply chain and you wanted to share some trusted data with a small group of counterparties, maybe it's your bill of lading that you need to share with the port or the port authority, the regulatory authority, a part of your customs declaration. That small group of people then could see a trusted document, a trusted bill of lading, if you like, and that would facilitate then, a seamless or more frictionless transaction for global trade. So those are some of the good, use cases that we see for blockchain, where a small group of counterparties that you maybe have never met before needs to see, a data set or a document to move goods through the next step of the supply chain. The evolution of blockchain, I think it's like we're in maybe a nascent kind of part of that like evolution of innovation. If you remember, relational databases took 40 years to get to maturity. Enterprise software has been really good at automating an enterprise, okay? And we've had 30 years of strong growth around automating your business processes, your business operations. What we're seeing now to survive in the current world is a need to connect to the wider enterprise, right? To your stakeholders, to your customers, to your business partners and suppliers. So it requires slightly a different set of tools. And that's why, SAB connecting a network of businesses and using blockchain and maybe smart contracts in blockchain is a great way of sharing data with those external enterprises and stakeholders, as well as orchestrating or starting processes, automations with smart contracts. We really feel that SAP is in a great space because one, it has strong customer base, 400,000 customers using their ERP, but two, it's already seen the need to connect them in the wider enterprise. That's where companies like Morpheus Network can help with our middleware to kind of ensure there's a process orchestration. And some of the underlying technology then is blockchain, notarized, trusted transactions, and smart contracts, which are simple automations. I think there's several use cases that really lend themselves to a blockchain. So one of those is proving provenance, right? So provenance really is the origin of a product or the origin of a raw material. And what we're seeing from sustainability is the need to prove provenance, prove traceability from the consumer product all the way through the supply chain. And blockchain then is a really good way of actually proving authenticity and provenance of products, who moved those goods, how they were handled, where they were handled, from beginning to end. So that's one good case of blockchain. The second really is around trusted documents, a bill of lading, a proof of delivery. And we're seeing some initiatives around the electronic bills of lading and the mandates in certain countries, certain geographies like Singapore, like the Emirates, and accepting an EBL as if and like it would be a paper-based bill of lading. So in the insurance world, if there's an insurance event, you've got then a very clear set of business steps that you want to follow in a smart contract to make sure that the adjuster gets the right documents, sees the right data if there's any cold chain IoT, and then succinctly and quickly follows up on the action. So there's 3 use cases that we're seeing across the board that I think are really good for a blockchain type of solution. One of our best customers is a company called Federated Co-op. They're the 3rd biggest retailer in Canada, and one of the key projects we're doing for them is around farm to fork. So it goes back to that traceability question. How can we ensure that we can prove provenance for Canadian consumers? And not just prove provenance, but prove to see where a product was sourced, how it was grown, any pesticides, or herbicides that we used in the product, all the way through to the supply chain and then into the store. So again, with that, blockchain and the platform from Amorphous Network is really helping from a simple QR-based scan, all the information that is critical for consumers to see around a specific product. So we've got a really good case around lager traceability, where we've got a farmer that's growing barley in his fields. He then sends that to a malting company. That's then processed, sent on to the brewing company, creates a private label gold lager for a Federated Co-op, which is then sold in their stores. And we're providing then the end-to-end traceability. Another good case, I think, is Coca-Cola. So we're working with their Latin American division there. And for them, what we're trying to do is to ensure that their different bottlers, partners, there's 30 in Latin America for the stills division, which is, low volume, high margin products. Doesn't make sense to be building or making those in every single franchise territory, buying them from distributed supply points around Latin America and the Caribbean. And again, what we're trying to do is digitize that whole process, have a common catalog that the customers can order from, the bottlers in this case, and then tracking that end-to-end transaction all the way through to consumers. Another great project that I think we've handled fairly recently is Gulftainer. They're the world's largest private port operator. We built for them a visibility platform that allows their customers to actually then see container visibility much earlier on in the supply chain. So not just when it's berthing, when it would typically show up in the terminal, but all the process steps that happen previous to that, from loading onto a container on a vessel, any transshipment points when it arrives, in this case to some of the Gulftainer ports, and then obviously if we've got a better handle of arrival to ports and movements through the port, we can sequence or automate better the downstream activities like booking a truck or customs clearance or regulatory filing. So again, getting everyone on the same page, one version of the truth is really helping Gulftainer improve the performance of the port and then obviously the performance of the overall supply chain for their customers. The best way to learn about blockchain is to look for that use case and really kind of get their hands dirty and get started. And luckily the tools available, such as tools from Amorphous Network, really make that simple to get started. You don't need to know about protocols. You don't need to know about different blockchain technologies. We've built a middleware layer that sits on top of those protocols that makes your life simple. So again, if you're a supply chain manager or a practitioner of supply chain, use a tool like Morpheus to kind of really get your hands dirty quickly in a use case and then iterate from there. That's my recommendation, Jorge.